Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most shocking and disturbing tragedies in modern history. It's a story of hope, faith, power, and manipulation. A story that began with promises of equality and a better future, but ended with the deaths of more than 900 people in the jungles of Guyana. November 18, 1978. Deep inside the jungles of Guyana, over 900 people died in one of the most shocking tragedies in modern history. Men, women, children, families. Some believed they were building a perfect society. Others believed they had finally found hope, equality, and safety. But behind the smiling speeches and promises of peace stood one man, a charismatic leader who demanded loyalty, a preacher who claimed he could save humanity. His name was Jim Jones, and what happened at Jonestown would become one of the darkest cult disasters in history. This is the full story of the Jonestown Massacre. Jim Jones was born in 1931 in rural Indiana during the Great Depression. His childhood was lonely. He was quiet, intense, and deeply fascinated by religion. Neighbors later described him as strange and obsessed with power. As a teenager, he spent hours studying preachers and religious movements. But Jim Jones was different from many pastors of his time. During the 1950s, America was deeply divided by racism. Black and white Americans often attended separate churches, schools, and businesses. Jim Jones publicly opposed segregation. He preached racial equality at a time when many churches refused to do so. To many people, he seemed progressive, compassionate, fearless, and that helped him attract followers. Before we continue, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss our next documentary. In the 1950s, Jim Jones founded a church called the People's Temple. At first, it looked like a movement built on kindness. The church helped poor families. It fed hungry people. It supported elderly citizens. Jones adopted children from different ethnic backgrounds. He called his family a rainbow family. To outsiders, he looked like a man fighting for justice. But inside the church, things were changing. Jim Jones demanded complete loyalty. Followers were expected to obey him without question. He claimed he had supernatural powers. He staged fake healings during church services. People believed he could cure sickness and perform miracles. The church became more than a religion. It became control. Former members later said Jones humiliated followers publicly. He controlled relationships. He demanded money. And he constantly warned that enemies were trying to destroy the People's Temple. Fear became part of everyday life. Still, thousands remained loyal, because Jim Jones knew exactly how to manipulate. By the 1960s and early 1970s, the People's Temple was growing rapidly. Jim Jones attracted people searching for hope. Many members were poor. Some were lonely. Others wanted to escape racism, poverty, discrimination. Jones promised a better future, a community where everyone would be equal. The church eventually moved to California. In cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, the People's Temple became powerful. Politicians attended Jones's events. Community leaders praised his charity work. To the public, Jim Jones appeared to be a respected activist and preacher. But behind closed doors, the situation became darker. Former followers accused Jones of physical abuse, emotional manipulation, and intimidation. People who tried to leave were often pressured to stay. Some members feared punishment. Others feared losing their families. And then Jim Jones became increasingly paranoid. He believed the government, media, and intelligence agencies were plotting against him. Whether these fears were real or imagined, they pushed him toward a dangerous decision. In the mid-1970s, Jim Jones began creating a remote settlement in Guyana, a small English-speaking country in South America. The settlement was officially called the People's Temple Agricultural Project. but the world would remember it by another name: Jonestown. Jones described it as a socialist paradise, a peaceful community hidden away from racism, capitalism, and oppression. Hundreds of followers moved into the jungle. At first, some believed they had finally found the perfect society. But life in Jonestown was harsh. The tropical heat was exhausting. Food was limited. People worked long hours. Armed guards monitored the camp. Loudspeakers broadcast Jim Jones's speeches day and night. Followers were constantly reminded that enemies were coming, that the outside world was dangerous, that only Jones could protect them. People had little privacy, little freedom. Some members secretly wanted to leave, but escaping from the isolated jungle settlement was extremely difficult. And Jim Jones's mental condition appeared to worsen. He reportedly used heavy medications. His speeches became increasingly erratic. He spoke about death, betrayal, and revolution. The dream of Jonestown was collapsing. Back in the United States, worried relatives began speaking out. Families claimed their loved ones were trapped inside Jonestown. Some former members described abuse and fear inside the settlement. Newspapers started investigating the People's Temple. The pressure on Jim Jones grew stronger. Then, in November 1978, an American congressman decided to visit Jonestown personally. His name was Leo Ryan. Ryan traveled to Guyana with journalists, photographers, and concerned relatives. At first, Jim Jones tried to present Jonestown as peaceful and successful. Visitors saw smiling residents, music, dancing, community meals. But underneath the performance, tension was growing. During the visit, several residents secretly approached Leo Ryan. They begged for help. Some slipped notes asking to leave with the delegation. For the first time, the outside world was beginning to see the truth. On November 18, 1978, Leo Ryan and several defectors prepared to leave Jonestown. They headed toward a nearby airstrip, but before the planes could depart, armed gunmen connected to the People's Temple arrived. Chaos erupted. Gunfire tore through the airstrip. Congressman Leo Ryan was killed. Several journalists and defectors also died. Others were seriously injured. It was a shocking act of violence. And back in Jonestown, events were about to become even more horrifying. After the airstrip attack, Jim Jones gathered the community together. Audio recordings from that day still exist. They captured the final meeting inside Jonestown. Jones told followers that enemies would soon arrive. He claimed their community would be destroyed. Then he introduced what he called revolutionary suicide. Some followers appeared frightened. Others protested. A few argued that children should not die. But Jones continued pressuring the crowd. According to survivors, a flavored drink mixed with poison was prepared. Children were given the mixture first. Panic and confusion spread through the settlement. Some people obeyed willingly. Others may have felt trapped. Some survivors later said armed guards surrounded the area. Within a short time, hundreds were dead: men, women, children. By the end of the tragedy, more than 900 people had lost their lives. Jim Jones himself was later found dead inside Jonestown. The isolated jungle settlement had become the scene of one of history's deadliest cults. When news of the tragedy reached the world, people were horrified. The scale of the deaths shocked the United States. For years afterward, the Jonestown massacre became the symbol of cult manipulation and blind obedience. Many people asked the same question: how could this happen? How could hundreds of ordinary people follow one man so completely? Experts later studied the psychology behind destructive cults: isolation, fear, control, manipulation, emotional dependency. Jim Jones had slowly built a system where followers trusted him more than their own instincts. Some members joined searching for equality and hope. But over time, questioning the leader became dangerous. And by the time many realized the truth, escape was difficult. A small number of people survived Jonestown. Some escaped into the jungle. Others happened to be away from the settlement during the final hours. Many survivors spent decades struggling with trauma and grief. They lost parents, children, friends, entire families. Some survivors later explained that not everyone in Jonestown fully supported Jim Jones in the end. But fear, isolation, and control made resistance incredibly difficult. The tragedy left emotional scars that never fully disappeared. Today, Jonestown remains one of the most infamous cult tragedies in history. The phrase, "drinking the Kool-Aid," became linked to blind loyalty and dangerous obedience, though the real event was far more tragic and complex than the phrase suggests. Historians continue debating important questions. Could the disaster have been prevented? Did authorities ignore warning signs? How much responsibility belonged to Jim Jones alone, and how much came from the system as well? Even decades later, the story of Jonestown continues to fascinate and disturb people around the world, because it serves as a warning about manipulation, power, charisma, and what can happen when one person gains absolute control over vulnerable followers. Jim Jones promised his followers a better world, a safe world, an equal world. But the dream he created eventually turned into fear, paranoia, and tragedy. Deep in the jungles of Guyana, hundreds of lives were lost, not because of war, not because of natural disaster, but because one man convinced people that he alone controlled truth, safety, and survival. The story of Jonestown remains one of history's darkest reminders of how dangerous blind loyalty can become. And even now, nearly half a century later, the question still echoes.